the programme. We're still awaiting detail as to how much money was taken out of ATMs, Bank of Ireland ATMs, on Tuesday night after there was a run on the ATMs when word got round that a technical glitch with the online banking 365 app for Bank of Ireland was allowing people to take out more money than they had in their accounts. There's a number of different aspects to this story. The number one is what will happen to people who took out more money than they had, how will it affect their credit ratings, how will the bank get the money back off them. But the public still have questions about the deployment of Gardaí to Bank of Ireland ATMs this week. That's according to the Executive Director of the Irish Council for Civil Liberties. Queues formed, of course, on Tuesday night, and Gardaí showed up, and in some places prevented access to the ATM. Liam Herrick, Executive Director of the ICCL, is saying if the guards are involved in an operation that restricts people's rights, restricts people's movement and their ability to access finance, for example, they must have a clear basis for it, and they must be clear about what that basis is. And his argument is it's not clear as to why Gardaí were involved in what was an issue primarily between the bank and its customers, and questions as to whether phone calls were made from Bank of Ireland to An Garda Síochána and all of that. But what are the implications for bank staff in all of this, the reputation of Bank of Ireland, and the wider question about how banks in this country fund and develop and organise their online offerings and their technological offerings, and how they work or not, as the case may be, for their customers? Because this isn't the first issue or the only issue. There have been several issues with regards to mistakes and technical errors with banks, whether it's AIB and some of their mortgage customers recently, or indeed what happened with Bank of Ireland on Tuesday night. With me on the line to talk about this in more detail is John O Connell, General Secretary of the Financial Services Union. John, good morning to you, and thanks for talking to me on the programme. What's the reaction of your members to this, Bank of Ireland members and otherwise, to these sort of technical errors and problems which have been cropping up more and more between Irish banks and their customers?
Yeah, I suppose the people I represent are in the front line, and they deal with the output or the fallout of incidents like this. So they will deal with the customers who were impacted, and the difficulties for us with that is that banks operate on very lean staffing models, and so our people on the ground then are inundated with requests from members of the public when there's an outage like this, and they're not staffed to be able to cope with it. In the recent past, the banks have gone to extending their hours on one occasion with an outage over the weekend, and in this instance up to 6 o'clock in the evening, to cope with customers' concerns and to be able to deal with customers. But it is very concerning, I suppose, the regularity of these. They're more than glitches, they're referred to as glitches, but outages, and the impact of them on customers.
And from that point of view then, are your staff left dealing with the fallout the next day and the day after, and when these outages actually occur, with people coming into the bank saying, look, I couldn't get access, what's happening here, why can't I access my money?
Yeah, so people would have concerns, and if you can't access the app, you want an assurance, and you're going to go to a physical building, which is a branch, to seek and get that assurance from the members of the staff of the particular bank. It's not particular to one particular bank. This incident is recent in Bank of Ireland, but there have been others, and with an increase in regularity. And that's why I suppose we have originally campaign for a banking forum, which put a certain report out, and that report identified the affinity that people have with their branch network, and also the issue of access to cash, how important it is for people. And you just saw through a social media report the reaction of a lot of people the other night in relation to it. And from our point of view, we argue for a blended banking model, and that's what we argued for in the banking review, where technology exists, but so does the branch network, and we see in recent days how important that branch network is. And indeed, the government had put out a discussion document in relation to the banking levy, and we had put a paper into that, and we called for three things to happen. One, that the levy should continue. It's in most European countries, and there's no reason why it shouldn't continue. Two, it should be increased in scope, in that there's companies like Revolut and that who claim to have 2 million customers, yet they don't have one branch in the country, and should be increased to include companies like that. And thirdly, and most importantly for your listeners' point of view, is that the funds generated out of that should be ring-fenced and used for societal good. And we would identify societal good as the retention of branch networks, the retention of post office networks, supporting credit union network, and also digital and financial literacy for all of us, so that we're competent to, I suppose, represent ourselves on financial matters, because there's plenty of data that shows that there's a deficit in knowledge in relation to financial literacy.
John, is it your concern that while banks are reducing the physical staff numbers and closing bank branches, that they're relying obviously more heavily on machines and technology, and that the investment is just not there, or we're seeing error after error, outage after outage on that side of it, and there's no people left to pick up the slack and tell customers what's going on?
Yeah, remember the two main banks made roughly about 1,500 people each redundant in the very recent past, and said there'd be no impact on service. And yet what we would say was that was a very short-sighted strategy, a lack of investment in the IT systems, over-reliance on offshore and outsourcing, and the loss of corporate memory or corporate knowledge through redundancy programs, just trying to reduce headcount at any cost.
Yeah, the people with experience, the people who knew things, are now no longer working there, and that institutional memory goes out the door with them.
And all the banks have legacy systems, and they have modern systems, so there's legacy systems in the banks that have been there for years, and then as new technology comes along and so forth. But you need skilled people to be able to navigate that landscape. I'm not tech savvy, but I do know that those three key things: lack of investment, too much outsourcing, and too much redundancy, without thinking through the consequences. Yeah.
So you're saying, look, in this day and age, there's still a need for the old-fashioned bank branch with the local bank manager and staff.
Yeah, and I would say in terms of it's a very, very important thing in the community to be able to go and get good financial advice from some skilled individuals in your local branch, and then make your decisions in terms of your banking or investment based on good advice. The problem with technology is what's called click compliance, where terms and conditions, I click, do you understand the consequences? I click because I just want to get to the end point. And people don't understand then why they're paying the interest rate that they're paying, or whatever component of the agreement they've signed up to. And that's the danger of the absence of a branch network and skilled people on the ground.
And that's why you need the financial literacy you're arguing for as well, support in relation to that. Outsourcing IT systems, globally, is that what banks do? Instead of building their own staffing internally, that as they get more cashless, more technological, more dealing on apps and people's smartphones, it's all being done by companies that the banks don't own themselves?
Yeah, so, they operate lean operating model banks. All the banks are, tripping over themselves, and we only have three, but they're tripping over themselves to say that they're going to restore dividends, and that dividends are going to be at an all-time high for shareholders. But, that's at the cost of investment in the business, investment in staff, and also trying to look for the lowest common denominator in terms of outsourcing. Where can we get this service the cheapest? Like, it's quite common, and we brought this to the attention of the Central Bank, quite common in Ireland and across the country to go to ATMs and find that they're out of order, and that they could be out of order, for instance, in a bank holiday, they could be out of order for the weekend and so forth.
If that happens, John, and I'm not with whatever bank it is in Ireland, as you said, we only have so few left. That do they have to? Do they have a private company on retainer for their staff to go in there on call, or what happens?
Well, again, the banks within weeks of one another outsourced a lot of their ATMs, and the only ATMs they retain are the branch ones and the ones connected to branches. So they've outsourced all the others, and you might have seen rebranding going on ATMs across the country in that regard.
Yeah.
But our argument at the time was that it was all around access to cash, and remember, it's your cash, it's your money. And that it was getting more and more difficult. You were going to ATMs and they were out or empty, and they seemed to be out for a couple of days and so forth. So that's why we highlighted in the banking review the importance of access to cash. It's how a society operates, it's how we all operate. But if you're being forced into a situation where you can't get cash and the only way you can do it is do it this way and so forth, it becomes, reduced in terms of, and then when an incident occurs like the other night, suddenly you have people on the street and the reaction to that, and people are concerned because, as I said, we only have 3 operating banks and retail banks in the country now, and it's really important that the services that they provide, be that branch-based or technology-based, is accessible to people all the time.
Yeah, functioning and seamless. John, listen, thanks very much for talking to us and giving us your view on that this morning. Interesting points made by John O'Connell there, General Secretary of the Financial Services Union, saying, look, this shows the need for a balanced banking system. Online, yes, but functioning bank branches as well. More support is needed for financial literacy for people, and this mode by the banks to outsource their IT, not the smartest move when things go wrong. Give us your views on any of that. Lots more to get to, including your comments after we take these.